Thank you so much for being here tonight. If I haven't met you personally, I think I've met almost everyone in the room. My name's Kate Alexander. I'm Associate Director of Florida Studio Theater and with the Suffragist Project. Tonight, we wanted our event to be a little more intimate and more family-like. We've had some very large events where we have milled and made announcements, but tonight it was about, we're on the cusp of the program. Tomorrow we begin the rights of all, the LGBTQ community and the suffragist movement, how they relate. It's no irony that we're starting with people that still don't have rights in many ways, as we start a year of celebration and a year of honoring. With us tonight, we have two real pioneers. We have Dr. McCarthy, who's here, who will be speaking tomorrow and heading that panel. I'd like to give a special thank you to Dr. McCarthy. That panel has been sold out in minutes. The Gumpert's Theater, we moved theaters. You cannot get a ticket, and there is the longest waiting list to get in. So we were so surprised that an event could get immediately this kind of feedback, which says the need and the compelling need for what the Suffragist Project is doing and what we need to do to further the communication. The other person I'd like to recognize in the room is a pioneer we all know because we watched her pioneer and lead the charge for us. That is Charlene Hunter Gault. Not one woman in this room, we are all beholden to her incredible pioneering work in many ways. So tonight is a thank you. It's for the people that have been really deeply involved on the project, and there are so many people in here. If you haven't met some, we have Leah right over here who has a dance company, and she's going to be working with the Ringling Museum of Art. So get to know somebody in here that is going to be doing something during this year-round program. But I would like to start on the cusp and introduce today some people to let you know about what we're doing around the project. And the first people I would like to introduce to speak is the combination BTN Films and METV, led by an incredible Charles Clapsaddle, who's Charles is doing a documentary with BTN and Judge Duran Adams and Judge Williams over the whole year. They're coming to everything. But the charge was led through the inspiration of Charles Clapsaddle, who every day comes forth and asks, what can we do? What can we film? And in fact, we have to refilm the great march we did down Main Street. So if you're in here and you want to join that, we want to hear from you. We are going to recreate that for the documentary. It was too dark. Who would have thunk? So without further ado, I would like to introduce Judge Williams and Judge Adams to come up and let you know about this documentary.
Being a person of few words, I'm going to turn this over actually to Duran Adams, who I've shortened this from 14 pages down to 3 pages for him. But he's going to tell you a little bit about this project and what inspired it.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening. I'm Duran Adams, and I want to welcome everyone. I'm going to read this. I want to welcome everyone to the Waterworks. This is one of the most beautiful venues in Sarasota for entertaining, and I only wish that Robin and Rachel, the owners, were here tonight so we could thank them in person for providing us with this spectacular place for our program. Unfortunately, they are currently out of state, but Alex, our host, is here, and we are in good hands. The reason I'm speaking, Alex, where is Alex? The reason I'm speaking tonight is to make you aware that a film is being created by Charles Clapsaddle and Manatee Educational TV, along with BTN Films, a film company involving Judge Williams and myself. We've been engaged by Kate Alexander to document, through film, the monumental project she and Meg Gilbert have created through the Florida Studio Theater. The project is called Voices of Suffragists. Filming has already begun. The documentary movie is being shot around a large number of public events marking the history of the movement to gain women in the United States the right to universal suffrage, the right to vote, and of the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which created that legal right. The project itself is ambitious and is the biggest celebration of its kind in the country. It had its official kickoff event this past December the 3rd and will officially culminate on August the 20th of this year, which will mark the 100th anniversary of the passage of the law. In between these two dates will have been created over 50 public events. I think that they're all in Sarasota County, is that correct?
And Manatee.
And Manatee County. This project will create a parade of many different stories performed on stage in our public schools and in an actual parade. We filmed suffragists marching in the holiday parade, but it was a little dark, so we're gonna film that over. All of these events are designed to shine a light on the long fight to pass the 19th Amendment. One of the problems of making a film which documents the project itself and at the same time helps to tell the story of the march of people who brought the 19th Amendment home lies in figuring out how to marry these two narratives into a cinematic form, into a movie about the biggest celebration of its kind in the country and about the story of mostly fierce women fighting for a fundamental human right. It is a challenge. But thankfully, we have Kate Alexander and Meg Gilbert, Florida Studio Theater, and Charles Clapsaddle to make it all work, and it will. We are grateful for this opportunity to be involved in this daring project and invite all of you to come along. Thank you.
A good friend of mine has a saying, there is no I in the word team. Everyone in this room is part of the team. Florida Studio Theater has given immense resources, as well as the other people in the room, from Jane Plitt and Jim Bruin. And all around the room we could look and we can see resources being developed for this to reach out to our community, with most of the events free. But here at the theater, we're cooking up a storm. And I'd like to introduce to you the associate artist of Florida Studio Theater, who manages the literary department, and with Richard Hopkins came up with commissioning 4 playwrights. Jane and Jim are co-producers on that, to commission plays. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about that. I'd like you to welcome Catherine Rindazzo.
I have to follow suit and bring my notes too. But I don't have 14 pages, so I've already cut it down. Thank you, Kate. Thank you for asking me to be a part of this. And it is always a pleasure to work in an art form where plays change. They change people, they change the way people see each other and the way they think about all the different social issues that are in today's world. So I want to talk about why new plays. Well, as Richard says, then we'd just be doing old plays, right? But new plays are the voices of the people who are taking the stories and bringing them to life in a collaborative art form that I don't think any other art form has the kind of collaboration that plays do. So it's really important that we listen to the voices that are writing today. And the playwrights that we chose, and I'll speak about those different playwrights, are so unique and diverse that it was very obvious who those playwrights should be when we chose them. So when the project came up, Kate and Richard and Rebecca were saying, there's a lot happening with this suffragist movement, and we need to be a part of it. And we need to be a part of it not just because it's such an important part of our history and what it does and what it says for us as women and people, but it's also speaking to the things that are happening right now that are mirroring what's happening in women's lives with ERA and the Me Too movement. So we are at the forefront of making an impact with suffragist plays that are going to allow people a very deep and personal look at what the history of the suffragist is. So let me talk about the 4 playwrights that we have. You may have seen The Cottage, hopefully last summer. And that was by a playwright by the name of Sandy Rustin, who writes these amazing comedies that are set in different eras. And she had the idea to come up with The Suffragist Murder. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. But what it does is it immediately tells you that there's danger involved. But she does it in a way, it's like, think of an Inspector Calls. It's kind of a frothy, farcical murder mystery. And everything unfolds, and there's mayhem, and it's unique, and it's going to be very entertaining. And those of you who are going to be coming to the readings, you're going to be able to get to see these plays in process. Sandy was here in the summer, and we got her ideas started, and she's going to be back in May, and we're going to continue on that workshop process. Then we have Rachel Lynette, who was a new voice to us, who came highly recommended from the National New Play Network. And that's an organization that we're involved with to continue the life of the new play and to make sure that the playwright's voice doesn't get one production, but many productions. And she came highly recommended to us, and she really is very young and very brilliant, and she writes very quickly. And when she has an idea, her research is so vast that it's hard to pin down and narrow what the topic is. But imagine pre-Seneca Falls, and I'll just read a little bit of her synopsis here. The Fortin sisters, that are part of an affluent African-American family in Philadelphia, were already fighting for women's right to vote as they fought to end slavery. And this is set between 1832 and 1838. And her play is called We the People Too. And it follows the story of Harriet Fortin and her sister, and a lot of the deep secrets of their personal relationships and their family and what was intertwined will come to light with that. We'll see Rachel back here in May as well. Another playwright that was familiar to us, Jacqueline Goldfinger, actually was a literary intern for Florida Studio Theater many years ago. And she is originally from the Florida area, so she has a very Florida-sounding voice. And we thought that her unique take on a comical way to twist a suffragist story was going to be a unique voice to add. And hers is called I Love Donna Best, which is a portmanteau for I Love Lucy, Father Knows Best, and Donna Reed, right? So imagine that, right? Well, if you think of I Love Lucy and you think of all of the crazy little things that her and Ethel got into, that's what Jackie has done. She's taken the idea that what if the vote did not pass? And these 4 very, very colorful characters get together once a week for their coffee clatch, and they listen to this podcast, and this podcast is going to talk to them about voting again on how to get the vote passed, how to get the right to vote passed. So, well, they have to dress up as men, maybe, or they do all these crazy things to try to get the vote. So that's a comical lens on that one. And then we have invited back Mark St. Germain, which some of you know, hopefully. You've seen his work on our stages. And he wrote Eleanor, a one-woman show and this is told by the First Lady herself. The audience is invited into the powerful life from the cradle to the grave, and in a stirring and nuanced look at one of the most famous women in American history. And she fought for the voiceless and children, the impoverished. I mean, she really made her mark on the White House and beyond. So these are the 4 playwrights that we have invited here. We will have them here in May. We will have them here back in August for a huge workshop celebration. It is a new play festival that hopefully all of you will be able to attend. And I thank you very much for your time. It's very important that we have these voices tell these stories of an important time in history.
It's important to note that none of these plays that were commissioned were directed. At the center of Florida Studio Theater is the mission to reach the conscience of the day, both the issues and even more importantly, the moral heart of the day, with plays that are meaningful, impactful, whether it's a comedy, whether it's a drama. So in picking the people, we chose the people. But their voice is to be unfettered. Their voice is to be uncontrolled. And the power of the imagination given full rein. To move forward, I love working in a city that's a community, that I can look around this room and see almost everyone as colleagues. When we were starting out, nobody would listen to us or believe us. So you would go ask for money or go tell about your program, and they would just look at you blankly. We hadn't proven anything. But now, years later, I can call Georgia Court, I can call the Symphony, I can call almost everyone in this room, and they listen, and people come forth. To finalize the program, coming forth, I would like to introduce someone who came forth through the auspices of Charlie and Cyprit. She said, I want to do this. I want to get you 2 together. Kelley Lavin of Sarasota Magazine, we hadn't really communicated in a deep way. We knew of each other. We knew each other's reputation, but I hadn't had the opportunity to really get to know this person. And I walked in, and there sitting at a table was just a giant yes. If you know improvisation, there's no word for no in improvisation. I can't do a scene with you, and you say, no, I don't believe that. Everything is yes, because yes gives us possibility. So walking into her office with something that could be $10,000 and more, $25,000. It was just yes. How we were going to get the money was, I don't know. But it was yes. And what started there became a friendship. And I'd like to introduce a woman that I deeply admire who's changed this city and who has jumped in head first on this program to create the commemorative brochure for every single organization that is involved in the project. That is over 60 now, and that means over 30,000 people attending. So, Kelley, would you come forward?
Wow. Charlie Ann, of the many gifts you've given me, a friendship with Kate is one that I treasure the most, so thank you. I am going to play a game that I do called Did You Know? And we do this every month when our magazine comes out because I want to make sure, damn sure, that everybody in our building has read our magazine. So I am going to, and I'm hoping, now I know you haven't read the brochure, but all of you in the room here know a lot about suffragists, so let's go. Did you know that the ratification of the 14th Amendment in 1868 defined citizens and voters exclusively as men? 1868. Did you know that it wasn't until 1965, a full 45 years, and almost a half a century after women gained the right to vote in 1920, that women of color were officially allowed to exercise their right to vote. They had been denied the access to ballot boxes and voter registration through fraud and intimidation. And unfortunately, we experience this right now. And did you know, and this one, Charlie Ann came to my office one day in just one of Charlie Ann's wonderful fits of passion. And she said, and I'm cleaning this up a lot, but did you know that Florida was not one of the states that ratified the 19th Amendment in 1920? And this is where Charlie Ann goes on, that it wasn't until 1969 that Florida finally symbolically voted and ratified the 19th Amendment. 1969, that Florida finally symbolically acknowledged women's right to vote. So all of us here, all of us that will be touched by this, just to use the word, and I, as you know, do not like the word amazing, this is significant, it just, program that is has so many tentacles, is so important that we stand on the shoulders of these women and we get out and we vote. This brochure, which, here we are, there's a fanfare someplace, is this is the cover of this insert, and this will be coming out in January, but all of the groups here will have copies of this to actually put their own program inside of it. But the facts that I just mentioned to you are all inside of this program. And I need to really thank those people that stepped up to help us with this, including Anne Marie Russell back there from Sarasota Art Museum, who really, these are all incredible women artists. Sarasota Music Festival, thank you, Joe McKenna and Roseanne McCabe. State College of Florida, Bookstore One, thank you, Georgia Court. Achieve a Bank for Good, Florida Studio Theater, all of you, and West Coast Black Theater. Everyone will be receiving copies of this, and we'll be hosting everyone over at our office to come pick them up. So I'd like to also thank Lauren Pritchard back there. Lauren was the design of this, and Gigi Ortwine, who I know just had to leave early. But this was, to me, an honor of a lifetime. And there are some things that I see walk through and pass through, but when you get to do something like this, you go, this is important, and it's important to me, and it's important particularly to the magazine to do things like that, and that's what a city magazine does. So thank you all.
Kelley demanded of her staff that they did not do it in colors of no pink. It's very sophisticated. Richard, I think we should use the do you know for people reading our plays on staff. It needs liquor, yeah. There'll be a lot of people. All right, tonight, as we close, we'll have a brochure for everyone to take home. I think they're passing them out now. Let's take 1 minute, and we're going to close out with Paul Helm, the music director of Bright Star Performing Nightly, Ariel Blue, an actress, and also with the Suffragist Project. And I'd like to take 30 seconds and know whose shoulders we're standing on in this room. We came from women that had only whispers, that if they talked in public, they could be fined or arrested. It wasn't about voting, it was about controlling their lives. They couldn't own a house. They couldn't have their children under their guidance. And even to speak in public was considered blasphemous and male-like. That's why we often turn to have such a prolific amount of women writers, because they could not use their voice. It was a hard battle. 1920. It was centuries of silence and jail and stoning and ridicule and witch hunts. And here we are today, the beneficiaries, men and women, and still people without rights to vote, to control their lives, and to live a life that enfranchises them in the public domain, at the public table. But hopefully, through this year and through the passion of all of these organizations and the thousands of people involved, maybe, as David Mamet says, we can nudge the world a bit. So I'd like to end with remembering that great song that became the suffragist anthem, a civil rights anthem, but it started in the Civil War.
Rise up, women, for the fight is hard and long. Rise up in thousands, singing loud a battle song. Right is might, and in strength we must be strong. The cause goes marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Oh, glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Please enjoy the community with our fellow people working on the program, and Ariel and Paul are going to send us out.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh yes. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful
I'm here with Charlene. We have a very important topic to talk about today, women's suffrage. Tell me a little bit about why you're here today and what it means for you.
Well, I've always believed in the idea that our history gives us our armor to confront whatever challenges we face whenever. And if you go back to when the women who were involved in the suffragist movement, and subsequently the people of color, the women of color who were not initially included, all of them had voices that were strong, that led to activism that resulted in change. And so I don't really think that a lot has changed in terms of the what women give to our society. Because when things get a little bit quiet and people get a little bit complacent, you hear the voices of women rise to say, wait a minute, we've got to get back on the right track. Because they do say that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And there's no group in the world more than women, even in places like Africa, which is so far behind the United States in empowering women, but women are taking charge of their own lives. And I think that our history, as I said, has given us the protective armor to make us feel that we can do it no matter what the obstacles we face.
And do it with empowerment as well. So in your lifetime, what have you seen thus far in your lifetime, and where would you like to see it go?
To see the
women's rights?
Well, you know, I think that it took a long time, especially for women of color, to get the rights that the women who earned in the suffragette movement. But they were encouraged and inspired by that. And so what you had the civil rights movement, where women were both working in the office, but working, but also demonstrating in the streets, riding the buses. There were women who boarded the buses in Washington, D.C. to challenge segregation on the interstate. And before they left, this is how powerful they were and how committed. Before they left, they made their wills. And so they were prepared to die for freedom. And so when we don't teach our history enough. There's so many schools in this country where the history of our women and our women of color are not taught. And I think it's very important for us these days to make sure that our young people know our history, because when challenge comes, they need to know that this is normal, that there's always challenges, but that there are also ways of overcoming challenges. And I think that, you know, I've known women in all over Africa. I've known women in Israel. I've known women in Egypt. And I've known them in their capacity as leaders to have their governments adhere to the notion that we all are empowered. We should all be empowered to be represented and to stand up for what we believe in and to be recognized for who we are. Women who deserve equal rights with men and leadership. Women are taking leadership positions all over this world to ensure not just that women have rights, but that people have rights.
It's applicable to everybody across the board. That's right. What does this particular project with the Florida Studio Theater mean to you to be involved with it?
I came to Sarasota in 2012 after living in Africa and working all over the continent for a number of years, and then that followed a number of years that I was in the media. And when I decided to settle here, it was because I had so many friends that I had things in common with. In fact, so many of them come from Martha's Vineyard. They call Sarasota Vineyard South. But it's just been wonderful because the people that I connected with even before I moved here were people who were committed to human rights and civil rights and living well. And by living well, I don't mean living according to how much money you have in your pocketbook, but living according to the belief that all people should be treated equally. And what I loved about the women that I had met was that they made no distinctions between the people in Newtown and the people downtown. And those people downtown who maybe had more financially, economically than some of the people in Newtown invested in Newtown and invested in the people there. So it was a place where I felt comfortable, and I felt that people shared my values, and that's been the case. And I found that especially, well, just everywhere I go, but the new Florida State Theater is one place that it's just there. And it's down the street from where I live. And so when I pass by on my morning health walks, I just look over and I get inspired.
Wow, inspired every day, right? To live our best lives, to be kind to one another, and really speak up for the rights of not only ourselves, but for others as well. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and all the best during this wonderful year of celebration.
Thank you. A pleasure meeting you. I am here with Catherine Rendizzo.
Rendazzo. Yes.
Okay.
You say Rendizzo, I say Rendazzo. Okay, go ahead.
Razzle dazzle.
That's it. That's what my kids used to call me, my students. Okay, go ahead.
She is an associate artist at the Florida Studio Theater, and you just gave a wonderful speech on a very, very, very hot, passionate topic, women's rights.
Yes, absolutely.
And you were talking about all the upcoming plays that are going to be coming this spring and this summer. Why don't you touch on that just a little bit?
I'm so fortunate that I get to work in this field because I get to work with playwrights that are creating a story from narrative that exists, and they're turning it into something theatrical that's edgy, that pushes, and that gives us a piece of history. I don't know of any other art form that allows that kind of collaboration and that kind of powerful message.
Sure, absolutely. And to put it in front of different audiences every night.
That's right.
Must be very empowering for those actors.
And everybody walks away taking something different.
Sure.
You know, there are things they didn't know. I'm always amazed at how many people really didn't understand which states passed the right to vote and when, or which ones held back.
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It was brought up this evening that Florida did not acknowledge African American voting 50 years after
Exactly.
it was ratified. So
Yes.
that was a fun fact for me. Not a fun fact, but a fact.
But a fact, right.
That was truthful and sad all at the same time.
And even though we hear that information, I don't know if there's any way for us to truly understand what it had to feel like to really be one of those women back then.
I can't imagine, because I'm pretty outspoken.
Yeah, me too.
So I can't even imagine what it feel like to just be stifled and defeated and
No.
deflated. And
I was thinking about when Kate Alexander was up here talking about the different things that women couldn't do. And when she said that you couldn't speak in public, and I thought to myself, what would have happened to me? I mean, I would have been like...
I would have been stoned in the streets.
Arrested.
Yeah. But that's what it's so important to keep it relevant. It's
Right.
100 years.
That's right.
Since the passing of the 19th
Yes.
Amendment, but yet there's so much work yet to do. And
That's so
that's
true.
why Florida Studio Theater is so important,
Yes.
and these topics are so important to keep them relevant and not be silenced anymore.
I really hope that everybody partakes in all of the events that are happening in Sarasota County, in Manatee County, the panels, the marches. There are so many individual things that Kate and the team have done to get this word out there, and it's monumental.
And is that information on the Florida Studio Theater?
Yes, it is. FloridaStudioTheater.org.
I know that there's a lot of viewers at home that have probably lived through some of these moments, and it probably would be empowering to be involved with them again, and we'd love you to be a part of them in this community and come together.
I agree. It's important.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Thank you. It's really great to have this kind of platform to be able to express and talk about these ideas.
They're important.
Yes, they are.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm here with Dr. McCarthy. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about why you wanted to be involved in this cause in our community.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple of answers to that. First of all, I think that the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which the Suffragist Project is trying to commemorate and to mark, is a wonderful opportunity for all of us as members of a community, members of a country, perhaps citizens of that country, to really grapple with what it means to live in a democracy, what it means to have the right to vote, what it means for social movements of people who have been denied those rights to come forward and demand them over time. So I think these historical milestones are incredible moments for us to really do a deep reckoning with our history. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I was invited to participate in, I think, the first program on this year-long list of long programs, and I'm thrilled to be participating on a panel where I'll be in conversation with members of this community. I'm really thrilled about that. So I got an invite to participate. And then my parents live in Sarasota. I'm from New York, and I grew up in upstate New York, and my parents, after they retired from public school teaching, moved down to Bradenton and Sarasota and have lived here for about a decade now. And so I come down to see them.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we have a very diverse community down here in Sarasota, and excited to hear about your panel tomorrow. Could you give us a little sneak peek?
Right. So our panel tomorrow is going to be exploring some of the intersections of social movements as it relates to the rights of citizenship and voting rights in particular. So we're going to be looking at the intersections between the suffrage movement and the feminism movement more broadly, as well as the LGBTQ plus movement, and how those movements have aligned with each other over time, and also how they've diverged, some of the tensions that have emerged over that history, trying to connect the past to the present to the future. And so looking at all of those different kinds of political intersections over time is what we're going to be talking about. It's an amazing panel of folks, and we had lunch today in preparation for tomorrow's evening, and I think it's just going to be an incredibly rich and wide-ranging conversation.
Obviously, a lot of passionate, hot topics that are very relevant in the news today. You know, there's the Me Too movement. And, you know, just the entire community has been really pushing for equality. Well, one of the things we discussed today is that, you know, we're living during a Me Too era where issues of sexual harassment and sexual assault are in the headlines all the time, as they should be, where brave people are coming forward to tell their stories of their own kind of discrimination and the violence that's been done to them. We're living in a world where voting rights we're in an election year, voting rights are always on the table. The suppression of voting rights is something that's people have worked hard for them.
Exercise
them.
Vote. Exactly. I mean, those kinds of issues. The LGBTQ movement has just in some ways celebrated its own milestone. The Stonewall Rebellion 50th anniversary was last June, so there are a lot of LGBTQ issues that are on the table, and we're going to try to really touch on a number of those issues tomorrow and see how they intersect and also how they diverge.
This country has really been through a lot over the last 100 years. Where would you like to see our country move in the next 100 years?
Well, I think there are three things I'd like to see happen. First of all, I think that we need to continue to demand our fundamental democratic right of the franchise, that every single one of us who's a citizen of this country should be able to have the right to vote and should be able to do so freely and fully and equally without any kind of suppression or pressure in the opposite direction. The second thing that I'd like to see is I'd like to see I'd like to see a kind of people-powered politics. I'd really love for our political system, whether you're talking about the electoral system or legislatures or presidents, to be much more responsive to and built by the broad spectrum, the diverse coalition of ordinary folks in this country who have always been the lifeblood of our democracy. And then the third thing that I'd like to see is I'd like to see stronger reciprocal coalitions between different groups of ordinary citizens, women who are fighting for their rights, LGBTQ people who are fighting for their rights, African Americans and other people of color who are fighting for their rights, different groups of people who may have particular kinds of struggles that are different from other kinds of groups but share something in common, and that is the experience of discrimination and the aspiration to a more fully free and equal democratic experience.
Wow.
Very eloquently said.
Thank you. Thank you.
No wonder you're on the panel tomorrow.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to waste it all here. We'll see. Yeah.
Save some for tomorrow,
I'll have some
too.
juice tomorrow. We'll see. Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. Yes, combining resources, locking arms with
That's
other
right.
organizations.
That's
Hey, we're
right.
all here to do, for what it's worth, great things.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Right. We have common dreams, even though we may have real differences.
Yes, yes. Well, that's wonderful.
Great.
Thank you so much
Thanks
for
having
sharing
me.
that
It's great
with
to
us
be here.
tonight.
Good luck with the project and with the year. It sounds like it's going to be an amazing.
It's going to be an amazing year. We're going to talk to a lot of amazing, tremendously educated, impactful people in our community. So
Great. Awesome. Thanks for covering this. This is wonderful.
absolutely. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow. Take care.